So today we are going to start up with an unmanaged applications. So before we going into the practical part of unmanaged, how we can build this applications. So firstly, we have to know the what is unmanaged, what make it differentiate with the manage, what are the transaction life cycle. So we have to understand firstly. So then only you will able to implement easily. So we are performing the CRUD operations in a managed scenario where the developer don't have an access or don't have an availability to perform any kind of a logic because the CRUD operations has handled and taking the responsibility of a framework itself. Of a framework itself, it is taking a responsibility. Now, when it comes to the unmanaged scenario, completely a development approach has the more control for the developers over the data persistence, business logic as compared to the managed RAP applications, my dear. Because here, whatsoever the operation, everything is custom, my dear. Everything is custom. As the developer who has to maintain the handler phase, as the developer who has to maintain the save phase. Both you have to do. How we prepared in the ABAP. Firstly, we prepare the record in the work area or internal table. After that, we are going for the insert statement, right? So similarly, here also same. Preparing the record is one thing, that is the handler phase. Saving the record in the one phase. Okay, another thing. Both you need to be maintained as a developer in the unmanaged application. But when it comes to the managed scenario, it is taken by the framework itself. But in the unmanaged, as I said, the developer has more control. Okay, more control. The first point is custom logic. You can see in the unmanaged wrap, okay, in the unmanaged wrap, the developer write their own custom logic for handling data, retrieval, manipulation, and persistence. This gives more flexibility in how data is processed and stored, my dear. Okay. And one more difference is in the unmanaged, there is no persistency table which should be defined in our behavior definitions, my dear. I'll tell you why. This persistency, data persistency should not be maintained by the framework. This should have control. This should have control for the developer. So because of that, there is no data persistency. As the developer wish, they want to store in the multiple tables, they can store. Okay, they can store easily. So because of that, there is no persistent table which is to be defined in the unmanaged application. But the remaining things, which is C, my dear. Okay. So it is direct database access. You can get the data from your database tables or views using CDS views, and like how you expose your managed application, service definitions, annotations, everything is same, my dear. Next is manual CRUD operations. Okay. Manual CRUD operations. As I said, you have to implement this CRUD operations manually, where the framework does not take care of these things. For example, we'll take an example of a BAPI. The main core purpose of BAPI was this operations create, update, delete can be done from the BAPI. If I has to implement the managed kind of a scenario, can I able to implement? Definitely not. Because in the managed scenario, it does by the framework. But when it comes to unmanaged, I have an access to written down my custom code for the create operation, for the update operation, for the delete operation, everything I have. Okay, there I can implement my BAPI. Okay. Now, when it comes to the overall, when we compare, unmanaged applications have more hands-on approach to the application development as per more flexibility to written down your custom code in the unmanaged applications. In the unmanaged applications, my dear. Okay, so this is a simple image to understand how unmanaged applications are work. And before we coming into this, we should understand another point. That is, whatever the operations which it generate, create, update, delete. Okay, create, update, delete. For this operations to implement this, it is generated a separate methods, my dear. It is generated separate methods. Create separate method, update separate method, delete separate method. In that method, we have an importing parameter called as entities, as we know. Whatever the data which you are giving from the UI level, those will be captured into that importing parameter called as entities. Importing parameter called as entities. Okay. Now that is what? That is the interaction phase, handler phase, my dear. That is not in the save phase. Still, we are preparing the data. Okay. In the unmanaged, there are two phases, right? Whatsoever the type of an application. One is handler phase, second one is saver phase. As I said, in the unmanaged, you have to maintain the both. So once you prepare the data, those will be coming into the respective entities parameter. Whatsoever the operation which you are performing, every time the save sequence will be called. Every time save sequence will be called, which is a save method, my dear. Let's say I am performing a create operation. Okay. So whatever the data I have given from the UI level, I'll get an one temporary internal table. For example, I have to commit, I have to perform a save, right? So to perform a save, that is not in the handler, that is in the save phase. That is in the save phase, my dear. Okay. Every time, whatsoever the operation which you are performing, the save method will be triggered. This save method will be inherited from saver class. Inherited from saver class. If you remember, while we discussing about the late numbering, when the late numbering will be triggered on the save phase, right? On the save phase, a new number got generated. In that time, where it got inherited the method on the saver class only, right? So here also same. Every time when you performing the operation whatsoever, so the save method will be called. Okay, the save method will be called. That's all about the introduction. So let's get into our practical part of it. Okay. So instead of creating the wrap repository objects from the scratch, so as we know, we have the generate repository objects. So by default, when you go for the ABAP generate repository objects, it create a managed application. Okay, so if you want, even though you created a managed application, still you can change from managed to unmanaged. That is also a very much possibility. Okay, so we have a database table which is unmanaged travel. Okay, so I'm going to perform generate repository objects for this. After generation of a managed application, I'm going to change from managed to unmanaged. Just right click, generate ABAP repository objects, OData UI service, go for the next. You can assign a package. Let me check our package. What is the package? ABAP. Okay. Just right click. OData UI service. jet-wrap. Okay. Go for the next. See the data model. Unmanaged class 001. Let me remove the R. Behavior. Data model. Behavior implementation. Service definition. Service binding. Go for the next. Okay. Next. Finish it. Once it is generated, we'll change whatever we needed. Okay. Click on open. So now let me check in the behavior definitions in the core data services. Behavior definitions. So we have 001, right? 001. This is projection view behavior definitions. So this one are unmanaged travel, right? So by default, it creates a managed kind of an application. So now we have to change from managed to unmanaged kind of an application, my dear. Okay. Now, immediately, once you change from managed to unmanaged, immediately you get an error, my dear. Immediately. That is persistent table. As I said, the unmanaged applications, unmanaged implementation, as the developer who decides this data persistency, so that means it has to remove. For example, if I give unmanaged, which is UN, see now immediately you are getting an error. You can see this error. Persistency tables can only be defined. Persistency tables can only be defined in the managed implementation type mainly. Okay. So firstly, what we can do, whatever the class it generated, firstly we'll delete it because in the existing class, it creates for the managed kind of a things. Okay. We'll delete this class. 𝗵𝗃𝗶𝗶 unmanaged travel 001. 𝗵𝗃𝗶 this one, right? Right click and delete this. Finish it. Okay. Now I will put the control 7. You can see now there is no syntax errors. Okay. So firstly, let me activate my behavior definition. After that, so just press control 1. Okay. Just double click on it. Go for the next. Finish it. You can see now there are two classes which it generate. One is 𝐿HC. 𝐿HC is nothing but local handler class, which will be inherited from behavior handler. See now, whatever the operation you are performing, those operations, separate method, create separate method, update separate method, delete separate method, right? Okay. Now, and also you can see the save phase, CL ABAP behavior saver, which is LSC, local saver class. Okay. And this, it is generated a method called as if every time when you perform any kind of an operation, the save phase will be called. Okay. Now, as I said, we have an entities parameter. So whatever you are giving in the UI level, those are the handler phase method. That is not the saver phase. Whatever the data which you are assigning, you are just preparing the data. That is the handler phase, interaction phase. So now once it is done with the interaction phase, now we have to write an insert query in the save phase. But the drawback we come across in the save phase was, see now, this is the different class and again private section. We can't reuse these methods. See now, this is separate class, right? This is separate class. Handler class is separate, saver class is separate. If I get the data into the handler class, in a specific method, let's say create, how can I pass those data into the save phase? So if I get the data from the UI level to the handler phase, I'm getting the data. But how can I pass it into the save phase? That's the question, right? So in that time, what we can do is we have to declare a global internal table, my dear. Global internal table. So whatever the data which you get in the entities, you have to pass it through the global internal table. And once you declare as a global internal table, you can reuse at any method. Okay, that is the solution for this. When you see in the save phase and by putting F2, you can see only reported parameter. Reported parameter is only helps you to return down or to return any messages into the UI level, but you cannot get those entities data, right? So as of now, I'm not implementing anything, just to show you whether we are getting the data in the entities or not. Okay. Now, I will put the breakpoint on this create operation. Okay. And I'm activating my class. Now, let me activate my behavior definition. Once it is activated, now we will be coming into service binding. Click on publish. Okay, if we get the data, then we will proceed further. Okay, click on preview. Okay, so now click on create. So let's say I'm assigning one travel ID. So as of now, we are not writing any logic for the create operation, just to show you. Let's say Hyderabad, travel status as H. Now go for the create. You can see create operation is triggered. What I said, whatsoever the operation which you triggered, okay, every time after the handler phase, after the preparation of a data, then it has to commit the save phase of it. Okay, once your create method is run, then it goes into the save phase. I will prove this point in the debugging. Okay, so now check in the entities. See, now in the entities we have one record, right? Okay, travel ID 01 Hyderabad H. Okay, so now what is the understanding of this? Whatever the data which you are giving from the UI level, those we are getting in the importing parameter called as entities. Okay, so now when I press F8, save phase will be called. See now which method will be called? Save phase. Okay, every time when you trigger any kind of an operation, the save phase will be called. And now put F8. It says it was created, but it was not. Okay, you can see this was the previous data. So we are giving Hyderabad hatch, right? It is not created. Now we have to implement this one, my dear. So firstly, what I'm going to do is, firstly, to declare a global internal table, there are two different ways. One is declaring and defining another class and defining a global attribute in it. That's the one way. The second way is, here you will be having a global class. Global class. So whatsoever you are defining here, you can reuse this in the entire your app implementation. Let's say class data. Anything should be start with class. It's a static. Okay. So let's say LT insert is my internal table. Type table of, what is my table? Jet unmanaged travel. Okay. Similarly, I have for the update. Similarly, I have for the delete. LD update, LD delete. Okay. Now you can use. How you can use attribute? When it is the method, you're directly using that method with the class name, right? Class name, which is the static attribute, how you can access with the equal to greater than. Okay, so whatever I'm getting, so what is my class name? My class name is this one. Okay, in this class I have three static attributes. Okay, you can see LD delete, LT insert, LT update. Okay, equal to corresponding hash of my entities, right? Whatever the entity data I have, I am moving into LT insert. That's it. So now in the save phase, you can return down a query. Sorry, you can return down an insert statement. Copy this and paste it here. Sorry. If when I'm getting the data into LT insert, then only I am going to get the data. Otherwise, I'm going to perform an insert query. Insert get unmanaged travel from table. If you want, you can read also, because we are creating only one record. You don't need an internal table also. Okay, that's it. So let me activate and we'll create a record and we'll test. Okay, so let me refresh our application. Already we have 3 travel IDs. We'll start with 4th travel ID. Now create travel ID 4, continue, description as, let's say, Vadodara, status as V. Okay, now go for the create. Okay, you can put F6. F6. You can see in the LT insert, there is a one record which you get from the entities. You can check. See now, travel ID is becoming empty. Why? Why means the field name in the table level, which is travel underscore ID. In the entities, when you see, there is no underscore. It has to match with the same naming whenever you follow the corresponding operator. So that means there is no travel. Travel ID is 0 this time. So what is the solution for this? You have to perform the mapping. So like this, if you have 10 fields like that, do we need to map manually? This is the field, this is the field you can map. We have some alternative. A simple statement should be added. Now put F8, F6. Okay, it is performing the insert and it creates a record. Okay, when you click on the go, you can see now travel ID is not mapped. Okay, I'm deleting, even though when you want to delete, we are not implemented. Now, the solution for that was, so you can perform mapping like this. Mapping what is the field, which is travel ID from the table level, right? So what is the field you want it to be mapped? Travel ID. So when you have more number of fields, this is not a recommendable. 1 or 2 fields is okay. But when you have more fields need to be mapped, which is not as same as both source and the target. So just simple as mapping from entity. Okay. So whatever the mapping which you did in the behavior definition, those mapping will be captured when you put this mapping from entity. These are the two different solutions which we have currently available. So let's activate my class and we'll trigger once again. Let me refresh. Create 4. Okay. In the description, Hyderabad. Travel status was H. Go for the create. Okay. Now let's check our travel ID we are getting or not. Just put F6. You can see in the LT insert. See now? Now we are getting the travel ID. Okay. Now you can put F8. Okay. F6. It is inserted. And you can see now object created. When you go back, your record is created, which is 4. Okay. This is how you can perform create operation. These are the different phases it involves in each and every application manual. And next is we will perform an update operation. During update operation, one thing we need to remember was when any column, if it's not updating, you have to capture previous value. If any column is updating, we need to populate the updated value. We need to populate updated value. That is the 2 things you need to be maintained. So that means before update, what was the data for that particular record? You have to get that. After modifying the data, you have to get that. Both you need to be have in the mind and very clear picture. Okay. So firstly, in the update operation also entities. So that means whatever you are updating, those you are getting in the entities. So that means before entities itself, before looping itself, you need to get the older data first. Okay. Now, I'm going to written down a query. Select star from jet unmanaged travel. Okay. For all entries in my entities means whatever the record I'm trying to update, I'm getting that record, right? Okay. So here based on travel ID equal to entities travel ID multiple. Okay. Into table @data LT travel. Okay. Now, if we are trying to update the data, so now firstly check that we are getting or not. Check LT travel is not initial. So once we get the travel data, so we are getting the older data. So now we need to populate a newer value in the entities. So let me loop my entities. Loop at entities into data entity. Every loop is having end loop. Okay. I'm going to read my previous data first. Okay. Value hash of LT travel. How I'm going to read based on the entity travel ID, which I'm getting from the entities. If it is not reading it, it goes for the term to maintain that we have this one optional. Okay. 𝐶𝐶 not equal to 0. I'm going to skip that particular record, my dear. Okay. Now you have to update these fields conditionally. Means when user is trying to update, then only you have to update. Otherwise, you have to capture previous value as I mentioned. How do we know user is trying to update or not? Through the control structure, we will be come to know. Through the control structure, we will be come to know. When a field of that control structure is 0, 1, user is trying to update. When it was a 00, user is not updating. That is the indication. Let's see. So travel. And this I'm updating, for example, status. This status conditionally I'm using COND, which is the replacement of F. And this, when entity we have percentage control, and this percentage control you have status. If the status is 𝐼𝐵𝐵HEAD, we have MK on. Okay. So this shows the user is updating or not. Okay. Then I'm going to capture those values, which is from the entity. When it is not updated, I have to capture my previous value, which is travel hyphen status. Okay, that's it. Similarly, for the description. Travel description, and as we have description, we have description, we have description. So whatever we have in the work area, as we already have one temporary internal table, let's move into that. Okay, append travel to. So we have one class, right? So this is the class. Okay. And let's implement this operation, which is LT update. So let's clear travel. Okay. Now, so at a time we'll implement the delete operation as well. So to perform a delete operation, we don't need a complete record to be deleted. We just need a key to be deleted. We just need a travel ID to be deleted. Remaining things we don't need. Okay. Now in this, see now there is no entities in this. In this we have keys. Keys is nothing but which key you are deleting. Okay. Similarly here, LT delete equal to corresponding hash of we have keys. So it creates a mapping issue for the key field, right? So mapping from entity. So now let's handle this update and delete operations in the save phase module. Okay. So let's handle this part. Copy. So you can put else if LT update is not initial. Similarly, next else if LT delete is not initial. Okay. Now, so instead of committing this records from the internal table, because you are only doing for the single record, but if it is for the update delete operation, it's fine because you can delete multiple records from the list report in the v4. Okay, so unnecessarily why we have to take. So instead of doing all that stuff, okay, you can use the value operator. Okay, and thus let me loop my internal table. Let's say work area. My internal table was LD insert. Okay, corresponding hash of my work area. Okay, when I'm looping that, so whatever the record you will be getting corresponding to that work area I need. Okay, 1 bracket, 2 bracket, 3 bracket, 4 brackets. You need to close another bracket. Okay, similarly you can perform for the modify. You can perform for the delete. You use the modify and similarly use for the delete as well. And there is one more method you need to be implemented, particularly when you are going for the update and delete. The record which you are trying to update or delete, the framework should expect a method to be implemented, which is a read method, whatever you are trying to perform an operation. When you see here in the handler phase, so whatever the record, it can't able to identify which record you are trying to update or delete. If you put F2, you will be getting keys. Just you need to get the keys, my dear. That's it. Okay. So let's implement this part. Let's say select a star from my database table into table @data id travel. Okay. So for all entries in whatever the keys we have, where we have travel ID based on keys travel ID. Where, okay, copy this. Okay, LT travel keys. This method is also called whenever you are going with a delete or update, because delete you can perform from list report from the object page also. Okay, so if we get the data, now I'm going to move it into the result parameter. LT travel keys. Check the syntax and activate. I will put the breakpoint on this read operation as well, toggle breakpoint, and I'll put the update operation as well. I'll put the delete operation as well. Now we will test our application. So click on go. So now I'm deleting this. Delete. You can see now directly read phase is called, read method is called. Whatever the record you are trying to delete, firstly it read those, then it goes for the handler. Okay, because we don't have a breakpoint. So you can see in the F6, you can see in the LT travel keys which you are trying to delete. See now one record, which is a travel ID 0 we are deleting. Okay, then you directly it comes into, okay, click on go. Why it is not deleting? Let me check from the object page. Is it the same or not? Why? Because the internal tables are same, we are not changed, right? So which is LT update, which is LT delete. That's why. Okay. We will put the breakpoint again, which is a toggle breakpoint. So let's activate first. Okay. Now I can delete. You can put F8. You can see save is called. You can see F6. We are not performing create. We are not performing update. We are performing delete, my dear. Okay. Now you can able to see. You can see now it was deleted. Okay. Still you can delete multiple records. It's a V4. You can delete multiple records as well. Read method will be called. Whatever the records you are trying to delete, you will be getting into this two records. And once you put F8, assumption failed. Okay. Okay, it is not for fun because of the loop that. So let's check for the update. See now, for the update, firstly it reads the record. Okay. Now, so we are getting this. You can put F6. I'll tell you why this error. F6. You can see in the LD travel keys, one record, travel ID you are getting. But when it moved into the result parameter, and thus there is no travel ID because of the mapping issue. That's why it is creating an issue. So you can perform mapping from entity. So let's activate this. Okay, here mapping from entity is not allowed. Okay, so in that time what you can do is you can go for the normal mapping. Travel ID equal to travel ID. Like this we can go, right? Now I can go for the edit again. Okay. You can put F8. You can see now. You can see record is edited. Okay. I am updating travel status C. You can see. So we are getting before it was updated. So before it was updated, travel status was T. See now, previous value. Right. So once we get the data, we are looping this. When you see in the entity, you will be getting the updated value. You can see status C. Okay. So we are reading it. We are updating it conditionally. You can see status as 0, 1. 0, 1 means we are updating. Okay. When you see the travel status, we'll be getting the C. And similarly, when you get the travel description is Chennai. Okay, when you see the control structure, which is a 00, 00, which is not allowed, which we are not updated. So we are moving into an internal table. Now you can put F8. Okay, it is updated. This is how you can perform all this end-to-end CRUD operations. Okay. That's it for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay.